Top of the morning, Taylor. How you doing today, sir?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to start this new project here with you. I am actually very excited to start this new project here with you.
Yes, we've been without a project for a while, so I am quite excited to jump back into the collaborative world of Ryan and Taylor.
Mm, I suppose we should probably talk maybe a little bit about what we're planning on doing here for anybody who's actually going to watch this.
Yes, they should probably know what's happening.
Do you want to give a brief background, or do you want me to spiel away?
I think you should spiel away. It's a little bit your baby here, I think.
Okay,
So I think you should share your brilliance.
sounds good. Well, Um, my thing in life is that I love writing stories, and that is all I want to do. And I love writing stories with Taylor, and some days that is all I want to do. And so, um, basically, my thought here is that Taylor and I are going to start writing somewhere between a ton and an awful lot of stories. Um, we were thinking about doing some shorter stories to get started, which should be pretty fun. And eventually, hopefully, having them all tied together. But all the stories will be set in a world. They will allow us to play, stretch our own writing abilities, and try all sorts of new things. And we are going to release all the stories free for everyone, uh, as well as all of these videos to uh, show the process behind the writing of the stories. So I think it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, some of the most fun that we had collaborating on Sentinels was the brainstorming parts. Probably the most fun, really. Like writing's obviously great, but if you're talking about a collaboration, the collaborative part is really getting together and sort of hashing out ideas. And I thought those sessions, I like the idea of sharing those sessions with the world because they were a really good time.
Yeah, so it should be fun. We'll give it a try here. Um, so today, our goal is to start hashing out the very first short story. So Taylor, what do you want to write about?
And go.
No pressure, but go. What do you got?
So I had been giving this some thought leading up to this chat, and I know that we were thinking about in the grand scheme of sort of writing stories within a world that was, just leading up to some sort of cataclysm or some sort of era ending event. And the idea that kind of kept rolling around in my head for this first story was some sort of powerful creature, you sort of druidic in nature, that has a command over nature, and balances nature a little bit maybe, but that's where her power comes from. um, and we would see her sort of on a normal day seemingly going about what she does, and maybe so there's maybe a some sort of foe or some sort of other being that's not quite as powerful that she tends to keep in check. And on this particular day, for whatever reason, when she goes to stop whatever machinations this thing has, she realizes that the balance has shifted to a certain extent, and she's not going to be able to stand in the way of this, other entity. And in my mind, the other entity was sort of maybe had a different set of powers, maybe sort of a it's the kind of entity that's like, this is where the races have been created, like whether there's, and we don't typically use the common Tolkien stuff, but whether there's like orcs and trolls and whatever else, like that's kind of where this entity's power comes from. And kind of as a last ditch, move in the story, she realizes what she needs to do is she needs to let herself go and have her power kind of expand out into nature, so that those that come after her can use these, bits of her power, or however her power goes out there, as the resistance against this thing, which is she's realizing is inevitable now. It's going to become all powerful. It's going to be the sort of Sauron kind of figure that's churning this machine of change, and so she's got to give herself up in order to give a chance for this cycle to sort of complete itself, so that a defense could be mounted or whatever else. And I thought that was an interesting setup, because then most of what we write about could be this. It's the weakening of one age and the strengthening of another, and the heroes that kind of pop up throughout that setup.
Okay, I like a lot of what you're stepping in here. I think my initial thought, I was actually laughing as you were talking. I was like, yeah, so this is definitely going to end with the lady sacrificing herself. So I'm glad that we're on the same page there.
Yeah.
I think that what I want is, I think that I want to start it out. I wanted to start it out feeling a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And so what if we take all of those premises that you just said, but instead of it being like some sort of ultimate big bad, it is just a bad.
Mm-hmm.
Knocking the boss level down a few pegs.
Yep.
But otherwise kind of sticking with like the same story, same principles, and the same sacrifice at the end.
Yeah, and actually that works too, because she'd probably be even more surprised at her inability to handle, what has been maybe a run of the mill thing for her, and suddenly it's just this thing is more, powerful for whatever reason than it used to be.
Yeah, I think that one of the themes that I really want to play with in this is how humans react against what feels like overwhelming forces.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that is something that I feel like I see a lot just day to day, and I would love for us to explore the different ways that humanity confronts things that are so much bigger than like any individual's ability to deal with.
Right. Yeah, I like that too.
And I feel like we can just dive right into that on this. So tell me a little bit more about like what you're envisioning as, what is this other force? So we've got, more or less, we'll go with kind of a standard druid to start. What are you viewing more as like the antagonistic force here?
So my thought was, if it's the end of an age, maybe it's the end of this, sort of nature first, that kind of druidic magic age, then the sort of the antagonist to that, the natural one to that, is industry, right? Is the refining of natural resources for human use versus living in harmony with nature. So that was sort of my thought. So I don't know necessarily what I don't know what that power set looks like, but in terms of again, that's why and again, it does, I guess, sort of borrow from Tolkien, right? Because the orcs are just a representation of the churn of machinery, of industry, of that kind of thing. So whether it's just the ability to create sheer numbers of whatever we decide is the sort of foot soldier of this big bad, or of this whatever is sort of the harbinger of this age coming in. Whether it's just the ability to create the sheer numbers, we could give it. Are you interested in having like one magic system versus another magic system? Is that sort of
I do think
within the world?
I do think that one of like the overarching things that I want to do is, we can call them gods for shorthand, but I love there being like hierarchies of power in this world, where all power, like some power is available to all people, and that can be developed and all of that, but that you do get to progressively higher levels, and whether you call that gods or we decide to call them something else, or they become like the something of like maybe like the Force from Star Wars personified or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then having just a plethora of them, all kind of like Greek and Roman mythology style, like battling, seeking domination, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there could be sort of internal wars, internal struggles within that, pantheon of demigods and whatnot.
When you think of the antagonist for this, are you thinking of like personifying it in the guise of an individual person or creature, or are you thinking more of that it is a force that is spreading?
So in terms of the bad people,
Yeah, so like in this case, woman wanders into the woods. She's there to confront something specifically.
Yeah.
Is that something specific? Is that more like, is that a person? Is that a group of people or things? Or is that, like, how are you envisioning it specifically?
Yeah, I don't think I see it. I mean, I guess originally I saw it as a physical manifestation, right? Because it was going to be. But I almost like the idea if this pantheon exists of demigods is it's more of like a source of power that influences those that tap into it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess the question is like if the quote unquote good power is nature, where does what in nature is the opposite of that? What would create a power or a being that would seek to,
What if we did what if we took advantage of like a you're gonna know a little bit of this from Hunt from Driftwood Basin style, but what if we did like a mentor student relationship where the mentor will be our protagonist and has been trying to instruct a young one in the ways of the Force.
Right,
Sorry, yeah. Star Wars. And then, but they've been tempted by, we'll call it the dark side because it's super original. Nobody's ever done that before. But they are tempted by this other force. And I think, if we're looking at it specifically, it could be, you could have like a god of the grove or a god of the woods or whatever you'd like to call it, whose aim is like preservation and perhaps even expansion.
Yeah.
But then the student becomes swayed perhaps by another god which seeks to use the woods and the resources they provide instead of preserve them.
Yeah, no, this is great because then it's right. So our protagonist is all about balance, and you can use a bit of power, but every time you use power, you're borrowing that from nature, and nature is where we live. We need that to survive, and if we use too much of it, then it's gone. But if you use just enough to keep things balanced, then it can grow back, it can retain. So this student finds a way to gain power much more quickly, but it's at the cost. So I think it's really cool now. So now we can have a whole sort of corrupted druid set of magic, right? Like if like of instead of if a druid or some sort of natural magic user would use the power of the very trees to come down and entangle their foes, then this corrupted druid is going to turn the tree into some kind of monstrosity that that kills and then is gone, like it burns itself out, whatever. So it's whatever the corrupted version of it is. It's which kind of a neat idea viscerally.
What even if in our quest to make everything complicated and gray, what if there's perhaps a village or a population center nearby that is actually struggling in some way, shape, or form and could really use the resources that the student wants to give, but it comes at the cost of the forest's well-being? And so you have two characters who each have goals which are noble, not even just on the surface, but kind of all the way down, right? Like the student wants to help the people of the village, and the mentor is like sympathetic to that, but also is a devotee of the forest god and is like, no, we can't do this. Like that goes against our religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it goes against like the balance, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of even as simple as like they were warned, the villagers were warned when they moved here that this wasn't the place for them, and that the resources, you know, are for the
Yeah.
forest and for the woods, and we would not allow them to irrigate or plow fields or do those things that they want to do as they want to grow. Like you can stay here if you want, but it's a hunter gatherer thing, and that's it. And then the village wants what we want to expand. We want to, we want to grow our walls. Yep.
Yeah, so it's something like that work. And so then at the end of the day, the story begins with the mentor going into the woods to hunt her student.
Yeah. Yep.
So then how do you see it playing out? Like, so eventually they meet, they fight. Who wins, who loses, and then what happens afterwards?
I mean, yeah. I almost wonder if it, rather than it be, a sacrifice on the part of the mentor to, yeah, so I feel like we're at a different level now, right? Like, do we go away from, do we just go away from the idea that we had of some supreme being sacrificing itself so that everybody could have a bit of the magic? I think we maybe need to like,
yeah, we've definitely gotten a lot smaller than that, haven't we?
than that, right? Like that's, so I think, like I almost wonder if there even needs to be I wonder if there even needs to be a deity on that nature side of things, because nature sort of is like, there's always going to be those that can draw power from nature. And I think that the idea that that power is slowly weakening as this student becomes the big bad and creates this new sort of industry, resource burning, style of things, and gains disciples and grows that, right? Like and I think that sets up automatically without having to have a, sort of a monolithic deity on the nature side, which is kind of goes against it anyway. And then we essentially have people that are fighting for that balance. Like that would be, and this student that is like dragging this world into, what is ostensibly an industrial revolution. I don't think we need to get into combustion engines or steam engines, or like we can stay in the high fantasy realm of things, but it's about growth and usage, right? Like we can expand.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a good, I mean, again, I think kind of Lord of the Rings is our thing there. Like when Saruman is destroying the forest,
yeah,
he's not building engines or anything out of it. He's just building war machines and stuff like that. And I like the idea of it not being quite so blatantly black and white evil here.
For sure. Yeah. There's something to be said for, the dwindling resources of this planet, or just at least the tenets of balance that this world has been following is not allowing
humanity to thrive.
That's right. Humanity to thrive. There's going to be a group of people that feel like they are at the sort of mercy of nature and these rules and these druidic enforcers of that. So
I really like that. I really like the story a lot now.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think that's.
And so yeah, they meet, they battle. I mean, who do we want to have win this conflict? Like, what?
I think the student has to win. I think the student has to win, and I think the mentor can be killed as well. I think that's an important thing to have happen. And really needs to demonstrate that the path that the student is taking is faster and sort of gives results more quickly. But what's the cost, right? At the end of the day, what is the cost of this form of magic and, lifestyle going to be?
Could we twist it in such a way that, like, in the end, she does something that somehow both accomplishes kind of like her aims in maintaining balance, but also maybe helps the student in some way, shape, or form? I'm trying to think of some sort of sacrifice, like, oh, like, I have given myself to like maintain the forest, but it also has, like, the trees will grow stronger and faster, so you'll actually be able to keep doing what you're doing, sort of thing.
And what would her motivation for that be? Why would she want to end up helping him in the end?
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking of something like some sort of ending, like she acknowledges that her student had a point even though they were wrong, as I guess what I'm getting at. But maybe that works and maybe that doesn't. That might be something that you might have to just kind of feel out as you get to the end too, where
Yeah, I almost think that the mentor in this story, in this first story, really needs to be a representation of the purest form of the old era of thinking. I think that's important. And if anything, if she goes all out to try and stop, the student, it would be an unintentional way that she's pushed him into power somehow, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
or maybe, yeah, maybe she does sort of succeed in the moment in stopping him. They're both weakened, and he goes back to the village, or maybe villagers came with him, and the villagers, maybe there's like 4 or 5 of them that become his disciples in that moment, right? Like he finds a way to give a bit of the power, and all of them together end up stopping her.
Yeah, or even I mean, another solution that I could see is like maybe they at the end they actually like destroy each other, but it's his ideas that continue in the village and not hers. Yeah, like, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say like disciples, but like he's got people who were listening to him and paying attention to him, and
Yeah.
like when they both die, it is like his teachings that they follow, and the village essentially gets turned. Something along those lines.
I do feel like, I mean, he may need to survive only because he's the first one to bring about this different way of using the power, right? So I feel like that flame needs to continue somehow.
Yeah, I'm amenable to it. I think that in my head, I am not necessarily as focused on this being like a like I don't know, like it's not necessarily like a chapter in a book to me. Like it doesn't
That's fair.
It doesn't necessarily need to lead directly to the next thing.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. We're not writing a prologue. It's presenting ideas, and this idea of the idea that the students thought, like, his teachings being more, or his beliefs, whatever, being more appealing to this one village.
Mm-hmm.
And with even if he dies with the guardian of that forest gone, that village can that can be ground zero for the expansion of this different set of ideas.
Yep, very much so. And
yeah,
like, I mean, one of the fun things is like, one of the things I'm hoping with this project is to really think, very big. So not just in terms of geography, but in terms of time too. So, this could be like 100 years before another event that happens in the village or something like that.
Yeah, these kinds of evolutions are slow, right? So,
yeah. But yes, I think either he, like, at the minimum, his ideas need to survive. And maybe that means he survives, and maybe it means it doesn't. But one way or the other, like, yeah, his new way of thinking definitely converts the village.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that story. I feel
What
like I feel like what I want to see happen now is I want to actually get to work on it because I feel like that's when all the problems are going to arise.
for sure. Yeah, if we can get to work on this one, we can kind of see where the world goes from there.
But I mean, I think we have the general outlines of it, right? Like we've got a druid mentor going and hunting her
Yep.
uh, trainee who does really have like the best interests of the village at heart,
Yeah.
and who is trying to change things. And they end up fighting, and in the end, the old way of thinking is defeated.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, it establishes something, and maybe we don't know exactly what that is yet, but it establishes something that is going to last
Yeah.
long after the story is over.
Zooming back a little more big picture, what if as opposed to a corrupted form of natural or druidic magic, um, it's like alchemy, like the
Ooh.
you know what I mean? Because then we're not talking about science now, but it's like science of the time, right? Like it's whatever kind of alchemy, and it can even be an alchemy that perverts this magic, and it could be this alchemist guild that becomes the big driving force for you know yeah, we need trees for our fires, we need we need to dig stone for our buildings, and it's that kind of deviation from the natural order that creates this schism.
I actually like that a lot.
Because then too we when we're going back to it being a cataclysm or a changing of an era, changing of an age, balance is still there, right? Like scientific advancement is good for humanity, and alchemy in this state, if it's in they're doing things, they're creating potions, they're creating ways to deal with issues that don't require the druids, and maybe it requires a bit more natural resources, but it's making life a little bit better. But if obviously you go too far, those resources are gone, and we
Mm-hmm.
clearly know what happens when the dominant species on a planet overwhelmingly uses the resources. So it's balanced on both sides, and that allows it to be a little bit more of a, like, you want that less of a black and white. Orcs are bad; they cut down trees. Hobbits are good;
Yeah.
they eat 4 breakfasts. It's that kind of. I think that allows it, and that way it's like his teachings. Like she can find out that he's been dabbling with the alchemists in this village, like they've been perverting the magic together,
Or
and
he's just like the first alchemist.
or
Like,
he's the first alchemist. Yeah, maybe he's using that, and that can be the big secret down
mm-hmm.
the line, generationally, when we start writing other stories, is that alchemists don't want people to know that their learnings come from druids, and druids don't want people to know that alchemy is a perversion of their magic. And so, that becomes another, sort of
Yeah.
schism for these two factions.
Yeah. No, I like all of that actually a lot.
Okay. And are we comfortable just with using alchemy and druid? Like that's, or do we
No,
want to try and make up our
we'll
own?
call it something else.
Yeah. Schmalchemy and druids.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Druid nay,
Yeah.
alchemy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, and if you're writing and you don't want to deal with that, you can just use druid as placeholders, and that's fine.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. That stuff usually comes as we go along, right? So
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I really like that idea.
yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I will be really curious to see what you do with their characters.
me
And
too.
um, I mean, I'm seeing kind of the druid creatures, maybe like a middle-aged woman, who, yeah, like, compassionate in most ways, but also like very traditional, right? Like,
Yeah.
not willing to bend on anything, and the rules are rules for a reason, and tradition exists for a reason.
Yeah. Well, I almost like if druidic magic is passed down generationally, that's even better, right? They become the gatekeepers of something, and it becomes about blood and lineage and a lot of those things that get corrupted, right, over the course of time when a specific group of people have a specific kind of power and a specific kind of control, and they believe that they're ordained to maintain that power and control for the good of everybody else, whether they like it or not, right? It sort of creates that barrier.
Well, so I mean, I will say I don't know if I like the idea of it being necessarily all blood. Like they might think that it's blood related, but I don't want it to be.
That's fair, because that's true, because then this kid would have to be your son, or it would have to be something along those lines. So,
well, not just that, but I mean, my preference for magic systems is always that they are always available to everyone. Not everyone who may pursue them. Although you can definitely twist that here and make the druids like a little bit darker and a little bit eviler, and like they may teach that it's only passed down through blood.
Yeah.
But that's maybe not actually representative of reality.
Well, it would have to not be representative of reality, because if people with a talent for alchemy are using a little bit of this druidic magic to, that's actually a good spot too. That's a good thing to do too, right? They're teaching that it's this noble line, but in truth, it's whoever they happen to pluck out to, cultivate it. And it's stronger in some people than others, but
yeah. No, I like it. I think now your trick is going to be keeping it within 5,000 words.
Yeah, that's all right. That's the editing process after him. I just write it all down. For those of you that don't know, Ryan and our system is ostensibly that I kind of do the first pass of everything and write everything out, and then he comes back afterwards and makes it beautiful, which is good for me, because I much prefer just blasting out a story on the keyboard, and then someone else can go and make it perfect. So that's kind of our system here. So that's what we're referencing when we say keeping it under 5,000 words.
I'm excited for you to blast it out. I'm excited actually to tackle this one. So
yeah, same. Yeah.
So my question to you then: do you feel like you just want to just tackle this, and then maybe our next meeting is just after I've read the first draft?
I think so.
Sit down and talk about it, and then I'll tackle my own draft.
I think so. I think that makes the most sense, right? Then we've got the new stuff to look at, and you can give me ideas and whatever you want to, because it's a little different than Sentinels, right? At a certain point in Sentinels, it was just, we knew what the story, we'd be meeting for every few chapters or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we knew, and so you would just go through and polish it all up. I'd take a read at your polishing, and we'd move forward unless something really changed or there was a real roadblock. Whereas it's I think each individual step, it does make sense that it needs to be met, because it's one contained story. So.
Yep, every project. And I think, I mean, in my head, I envision that what's eventually going to happen is it'll just be like one story or one meeting per story.
Okay.
I think for these first couple, it might be useful to have one or two, just because we're also fleshing out the world as we're doing it. So
yeah, as we're writing these short stories within this world, as you said, as it fleshes out more, there's going to be a little bit more to contain, and that makes sense.
Cool. Well, I will leave you to it then. Good luck writing.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.